And as usual, you should get a prompt asking for your consent. So welcome to Unit 3, focusing on the assessment system. This is a session focused on Unit 3 for 4th grade, and it's also a session geared towards new teachers, meaning those who are in their first year of teaching Amplify. For those of you who are teaching, have taught Amplify before for more than a year since September, of course, you're welcome to stay during the session. Hopefully you uncover some new learnings. If not, please do know that we have open office hours after today's session at 4 p.m. and that time is available for more targeted support. If you're an experienced teacher teaching Amplify, would like to deepen your knowledge further or have more targeted questions, feel free to stay by. But again, this session is designed for new teachers and does assume that you've been teaching Amplify or have had some orientation. So welcome everyone. For those of you I have not met, my name is Reshma. I'm a professional learning specialist here. I've had the pleasure of supporting educators like yourself in implementing this program, and I'm looking forward to doing the same for you today. Just some basic norms to make sure we have a productive session. Of course, if you have not been on Zoom before, please do make sure you orient yourself to the platform. Thank you all for muting yourselves. When you do unmute, which I encourage you to please do unmute and share. Unless you're not speaking, please stay muted. That reduces background noise. Of course, make sure you can find the chat as forms and links will be posted there. And most importantly, please do engage during this session. Of course, we're here to support you. I'm here to answer any questions you have, but by no means am I the expert in this room. The expertise is shared amongst us, and we definitely encourage you to share best practices, strategies, tools that have been working for you, so we can really create a collaborative learning environment. You might want to use 2 windows for today's webinar. Those of you who have been in my previous sessions, you'll know that I usually demonstrate something and then give you a chance to practice and or reflect. So there's no need to work on 2 separate windows concurrently, but if you're somebody who likes to, you might want to set that up for yourself right now, or simply switch between tabs. I'll give you a few moments to do that. And also anybody else who needs to sign in or complete any other housekeeping task, let's just give folks a little less than a minute to wrap that up. And I see Joaquin is in the room, welcome. And if I do mispronounce your name, just come off of mute and correct me. Okay, hopefully you got a chance to set up your windows if you haven't done so already. So this is a 1-hour workshop, and in this very brief workshop, we hope to accomplish these 3 goals. Again, a reminder, if you came in a little bit later, I did mention we have 30-minute office hours towards the end of the session. So any targeted support, feel free to stick by then. But by the end of this 1 hour, we do hope that we can use the unit resources to really deconstruct what the learning goals for this 3rd unit of 4th grade are. We want to be able to utilize and apply the formative assessment resources that Amplify has provided to be able to analyze student responses and really gauge student progress towards these learning goals. And we also want to begin to strategically implement the embedded differentiation strategies and supports that Amplify Science has. So we hope to do this through this agenda here. We began with some welcome and introductions. I'm going to go ahead and continue to an anticipatory activity. So if you don't all mind meeting me at this Jamboard link, which I'm about to drop on in the chat right now. There you go. I put it in the chat. If folks don't mind meeting me there. And once you get there, you're going to see that there's 2 prompts there that we ask you to respond to. One is your definition of formative assessment, and the other you'll see is strategies you've used to formatively assess in a remote environment. And good afternoon, William. Welcome. And I see folks have joined. You'll see there's 2 whiteboards, and if you're new to Jamboard, you can post your responses in one of 2 ways. You can add a sticky note and change whatever color, post your response and click save, or you can simply write in a text box and click save, but I'm going to go ahead and delete these. So I'll give folks about 3 minutes to go ahead and post their responses. Please do remember there are 2 whiteboards, one for your definition of formative assessment and the other for strategies you've used to assess formatively in a remote environment. Give folks another 30 seconds to complete their responses. Just going to go ahead and voice what folks have written. So I see definition of formative assessment, ongoing assessment, determine students' progress and accordingly adjust instruction on the go to meet students' changing learning needs. So great, some keywords there: ongoing, progress, adjust instruction, learning needs. Exit ticket, check for understanding, discussion questions, activities like jigsaw. Another keyword there, check for understanding, used during a lesson. Keyword during. Again, quick check to inform your next teaching steps. So next steps, definitely another key word. And I see is a range of formal and informal assessment procedures conducted by teachers during the learning process in order to modify teaching and learning activities to improve student attainment. Yes, indeed, formal and informal, some keywords there. And what have you been doing to formatively assess thus far remotely? I see exit slips are still being used. Interactive activities embedded within the lesson, and I see Nearpod, games, quizzes. Thank you all for sharing, and it seems really based on your responses that folks have a strong grasp of what formative assessment is and some really great tools to formatively assess during instruction. And in fact, just to synthesize what folks have just said, formative assessment is in fact a cycle of eliciting, interpreting, and then taking action on information about student learning. Folks have mentioned the use of Nearpod. Some other tools that we've heard educators are using are Pear Deck, various features of G Suite. I particularly like Google Forms because it goes ahead and sends me a spreadsheet with the data all in one place, and it's something that you can implement during instruction. So this is some, how Pear Deck works. Here's some snippets from that. Flipgrid, I think, is especially great for the younger ones to provide audio responses during a lesson, and various features of Microsoft Teams. And of course, we heard about Nearpod. So this is totally feasible to do during remote learning, and it seems like folks are already engaging in this quite well. I'm going to pause there to see if there's any questions, and also let you know that throughout today's session, I do have such placeholder slides for questions in case I miss something during chat in the chat while I'm facilitating, because I'm not always looking at the chat while I'm facilitating. But if there's anything that's pressing or any comments you have, just feel free to come off of mute. I'm just going to go ahead and take a quick check of the chat and see if folks have any questions thus far about our objectives, agenda, or anything that we covered so far.
I think we look good, Reshma.
All right, looking good, thank you. So the next part of our session, we're going to go ahead and unpack the progress build, which is in fact the series of learning goals for Amplify Science units. But before we understand and deconstruct your progress build for this third unit of fourth grade Arts features, let's go ahead and either introduce you, if this is your first year teaching Amplify Science, which this session is geared for, or for those of you who've stuck by and you've taught Amplify Science before, you might have already taught this unit and are familiar with the phenomena and problem and the student role. So let's go ahead and take a look at what the student role, problem, and phenomena are. So in Arts features, unit 3 of fourth grade, students are figuring out the unit question. What was the environment of a certain place like in the past? The certain place is fictional place, Desert Rocks National Park. The students play the role of geologists, and they need to help the director of this fictional place, Desert Rock National Park, to explain how and when a particular fossil formed and how it ended up where it is now. And in the process of figuring out this puzzling phenomenon, they learn about the environment, what the environment of the park was like in the past, and why it has so many layers that are visible. Remember, the first step we recommend for internalizing a unit is, of course, you want to know what exactly are the kids figuring out? What's the problem? What's the related phenomena? And what role are students playing? So just a reminder where you can get that from. We really recommend the quickest place is the unit map. The excerpt that you had seen on my slide was from this resource called the unit map, that very first paragraph, as a reminder. So how are the kiddos going to figure out this puzzling phenomena over the course of 22 lessons? This figuring out is anchored by a very coherent learning progression, which is informed by our progress build. So our progress build is not only important because it informs the coherent sequencing of the lessons, it also anchors our assessment system. So the progress build really describes how student learning becomes more sophisticated, causal, and deep as they progress through the unit. And as I mentioned, our assessment system is anchored on the progress build. Today we'll be focusing on the formative assessments of Amplify, and as you know, or hopefully will deepen your understanding of by the end of today's session, is that our formative assessments are mostly beyond the flies, and they are represented by these orange hummingbirds. And as you can see, they are sprinkled throughout almost each and every lesson, sometimes every other lesson. And as you can see, they happen throughout the progress build. Some features of formative assessment in Amplify Science is that they encompass a range of modalities. So students aren't only writing, they aren't only talking, but we make sure we really catch them and catch them in their learning during doing, talking, reading, writing, visualizing. So by really making sure we capture student progress during all these modalities, we're getting a very holistic view into student thinking and giving them multiple opportunities to make their thinking visible. We also make sure that we're assessing the 3 dimensions of the new standards: the practices, the core ideas, the cross-cutting concepts. And another important feature is the Amplify Science formative assessments are embedded within instruction. So there's no need to start or stop instruction. Formative assessment is happening while you're instructing. So just to hone in on this key feature of assessing the 3 dimensions, I'm going to go ahead and live navigate to the assessment system document here and show you how each of the assessments is aligned to each of the 3 dimensions. Going back to the unit landing page, if I open the assessment system document as a printable PDF, I'll see that as I scroll down, I'm going to find a table that not only lists all the assessments, but it also tells you how they're aligned 3-dimensionally. So today we're going to be really focusing on formative assessments, and we're going to be actually looking at the first formative assessment at this unit. So as you can see here, this formative assessment is aligned to the disciplinary core idea of the history of planet Earth. It assesses students analyzing and interpreting data and also obtaining, evaluating, communicating information. And it also involves students utilizing these big ideas, the cross-cutting concepts of patterns and stability and change. So there's an example of that 3-dimensional alignment. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and unpack and take a look at your progress build for this unit. A reminder where you can find the progress build. If you go up, it is the 3rd document down. And again, you can open it up as the printable PDF. And as it loads, you'll see that this particular document outlines the concepts that students figure out in a teacher-facing way for each of the progress build levels. The bold are summary statements, and the rest of the text is more of an elaboration. So another step, preliminary step that we recommend teachers do before internalizing a new unit is go ahead and unpack your progress build, put it in your own words. And I'm going to give you a chance to do that right now. So since we're all working on the 3rd unit of 4th grade, I'm going to go ahead and share with you a document in which we're going to be working collaboratively. Go ahead and drop that in right now. So if folks don't mind meeting me there. I'll wait as folks come in. We'll proceed. And I see folks are in. And as you can see, I'm going to go ahead and fill in the unit for us. It's Earth's features. And then I'm going to ask everybody to go ahead and either own a progress build level and go ahead and summarize it in your own words. And it seems like this text is missing, so if somebody just wants to put in level 3, feel free. And also or go ahead and summarize the connections between the levels, because as you will see, the progress build is cumulative, that students get an opportunity to refine and revise their previous level understandings in the new one. So also another preliminary step that's important is really understanding how are these ideas connected and how do the new ideas build on each other. So go ahead, you can feel free to summarize the progress build level in your own words, or you can focus on the connections. This is a collaborative working doc, so choose whatever floats your boat at this point. And do know that the intention is not to complete this exercise completely, just to get us started, since this is a 1-hour session. If you'd like to complete this collaboratively, feel free to stay during office hours and we can continue work there. So I'll put 5 minutes on the clock for us to really internalize and summarize our progress build, just to honor folks' silent working time. Any questions? I'm here. Feel free to message me privately on the chat, and I'm happy to assist you there. So we'll come back in 5. I see folks have done a great job of summarizing most of the progress build levels and really honing in on the connections between the levels. Again, I want to acknowledge that was by no means enough time to summarize all the levels and really internalize all the connections, but do know you can come back to this document. It's a collaborative work document, and we always encourage you to engage in this sort of exercise, either by yourself or collaboratively as a preliminary step for internalizing a unit. I'm just going to pause there to see if there's any questions that I've missed or anything else that's come up, or if you have any insights or thoughts as well. Looks like we're good. Folks, we're going to go ahead and really next going to deconstruct the first formative assessment of this particular unit. And I'm going to go ahead and model the very first formative assessment that occurs in this unit. And as we are engaging in this model, it's just one activity. I'm going to ask you to put on the hats of students while I put on the hat of teacher. But by no means is this activity going to take as long as it would with your kiddos. My purpose here is simply for you to get a sense of what a formative assessment can look and feel like remotely, and then also for you to put on the cap of how would you modify this formative assessment delivery and how would you adjust instruction. So I'm going to go ahead and put on the hat of a fourth grade teacher, and you are all my virtual students now. Welcome back, class. We are going to continue with our lesson. And a reminder, we learned about the difference between an observation and an inference last time. Remember, an observation is anything you notice using any of your five senses that you can see, smell, hear, taste, okay, or feel. And an inference is different. An inference is something you can figure out based on observations and things you already know, background knowledge. So let's see an example. Look at this picture. If I say that there's an eggshell in a nest, that's an observation, because I'm using my sense of sight, seeing. But if I say a bird hatched out of the egg, that's an inference, because I'm using what I see and I'm using what I know about birds and eggs to make a statement, to say something, and that's an inference. We're going to practice really understanding the difference between the two next. When it comes to fossils, okay, so we're really going to have a chance to really learn about the difference between these two things, observation and inference, when it comes to this fossil that we've been investigating in this unit. So I want you to go ahead and go to the Jamboard that I have set up for you. Okay, and you're going to read each of these statements you're going to see on the Jamboard, and I also put this on our Google Classroom so you would have a copy. So you can do one of two things. Remember, on the Google Classroom, I said you can either print these out if you have a printer and group them. So if you have the printouts, you can group them. If you don't, that's okay too. I'm throwing in a Jamboard into the link, into the chat, and you're going to meet, you can sort this on the Jamboard. So you can work with a partner at home if you'd like, and you're going to look at each of these cards and group it under observation or inference. And I'm going to be taking a look at your Jamboards, or if you're doing this with the printouts, remember you're taking a picture and sending it to me when you're done. Okay, taking off the teacher hat, we're not going to actually do this activity, but this is the actual on the fly. So let's fast forward, fast forward. So thank you, kiddos, for doing that work on the Jamboard. And I also got photos from students who worked with the paper cards. So in this lesson, we really learned about observations and inferences when it comes to the fossil. And we also know that geologists use observations and inferences to learn more about an organism. In the next lesson, when I see you tomorrow, we're going to learn more about how fossils form. So taking off the hat of the teacher again. So that's the end of the model activity, folks. Just to give you a sense of what a formative assessment can look or feel like remotely. Of course, there's various other ways to deliver this, and I'm interested in hearing how folks would do that. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of the resources that Amplify Science provides to really assist you in unpacking a formative assessment, analyzing the student data, and then taking action. So remember, each and every activity comes with this text box, a look for and a now what. This particular formative assessment happened in the second lesson in activity 4. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate to that and show you where you can find that. So second lesson. And folks, at any point, I'm not able to see the chat while I'm facilitating. So if you have a question, anything that you want me to repeat or slow down on, please let me know. I know there's various experiences in the room, some teachers who are completely new to Amplify and some who've been teaching for, I think somebody in here 3 years. So I of course want to meet the needs of everybody as best as I can, but if there's something that you need clarification on, I'm really relying on you to let me know. So activity 4, we're going to go to the activity ribbon. I'm just going to here, oops, I'm on activity 3, so let's go to the next activity. So this was the particular lesson, and you see it has that hummingbird. If I click that hummingbird, it gives me a look for and a now what. And this is what you see on my slide, FYI. So I'm just going to go back to my slide. So when you're implementing a formative assessment, you really want to be clear on exactly what are you looking for, listening for. Because by being very clear on what data we're going to collect, we can be even that more precise and targeted on how we're going to adjust instruction. So I'm going to provide you with a tool that you may want to use if you like it. I'll go ahead and drop it into the chat. And this particular tool, folks, unlike the other one, is a individual work doc. So if you can, once you get to it, just make a copy. This is meant for individual work, unlike the previous set of slides I sent. So once you enter that, if you can just go to File and make a copy for yourself, that would be great. And I'm going to also live navigate to it. It says copy me. And I see folks are slowly entering. If you can just go ahead and make a file and then click File, excuse me, and make a copy for yourself, that would be great. Give folks a minute to do that. So just take a minute to make a copy and we'll continue. And as you're on your own copy, you'll see that on the second page is this particular tool. And I also included, if you look at your individual copy, a PDF link that you can download onto your computer if you wanted to use it, a PDF version of what you see on this slide. And this is basically a tool that you can choose to use to help you collect and analyze your data. So besides filling out that basic information, the teacher unit name, this first part is look for. What exactly are you looking for while you're assessing students? So let's go ahead and practice filling this in. So if I read the look for here, which I'll go ahead and read out loud, and we can summarize the look for into our data tool. Students were introduced to the distinction between observations and inferences as they read clues from the past. Identifying Dr. Corria's observations and inferences gave students a chance to begin differentiating between the two. This sorting activity is an opportunity to informally assess students' ability to separate observations and inferences. As you circulate, do you notice pairs sorting statements describing what can be sensed with the 5 senses into the observation category, and statements that integrate science ideas and prior understanding into the inference category? This is a practice that students will continue to develop throughout the unit, and it's not expected that students will be able to accurately sort all statements at this point. So if I were doing this, I would just go ahead and perhaps summarize that as a difference sorting observations and inferences accurately. Okay, you might choose something else. And then this is a chance for you to, if you were to use it, put the students' names. And sometimes there's more than one look for. Here you can quickly put in a plus, minus, delta, whatever system you want to use to really see how students are meeting this look for. So that's just a resource for you folks that you can use if you'd like. So we've summarized our look for, we're in this case, the way I delivered it, I'm taking a look at the Jamboards, I'm taking a look at the pictures, and I notice a few students are not able to differentiate between an observation and inference. So what do I do now? How do I tailor instruction? In that text box, remember, there were some suggestions, and of course, you will have your own. So let me just go ahead and read what suggestions are here. Actually, I'll give folks a chance to read it themselves. And if you can, in a minute or two after you finish reading, either come off of mute or in the chat, let us know which suggestions will you use, or how would you adjust instruction for students remotely who are not quite understanding the difference between observation and inference. So I'll give folks a chance to read and then either respond off of mute or in the chat. And I know some folks are either chatting privately or to everyone. I will voice all of the suggestions. And as you're typing or coming off of mute, whatever you'd like, please also feel free to suggest how would you administer this formative assessment differently, if you would. see some responses coming in. I'll give other folks another minute to gather their thoughts. Either maybe you're typing or you'd like to come off of mute. So I see various great ideas coming in for adjusting instruction or delivering that formative assessment differently than what I had demoed. I see I might use all depending on student needs. However, I think the first and second would work best remotely. So it seems like some folks like the suggestions are there. And again, we see I like the suggestion of using objects in the room to practice making those inferences versus observations and focusing one statement at a time. So far we like what's already in these suggestions. And then I also see this seems perfectly tied in with the activity, so I'm not going to alter it at all. I see somebody say I might limit the number of statements for students with challenges. Yeah, great, wonderful adaptation. Another adaptation I see is place all the cards onto Google Slides and move them around for sure. I had just mentioned Jamboard, but you can also do that on Google Slides. I also thought, and folks might think differently about this, of giving students the option of working on the cards because it gives them that tactile experience that they might be missing from some kids, depending on the situation, not going in person. So whether you keep that open as an option is really up to you, since you're really the experts in your classroom and in terms of the needs of your students. And again, I get another, I'll use it the way it is and maybe add a video for sure so students can get more information. And then somebody liked the ideas of the Google Slide with the virtual cards. Yeah, Google Slide, Padlet, Jamboard, these are all great options. Thanks all for sharing. Let's getting our thoughts rolling on how we would adapt instruction remotely. Folks, the next slide, I've also included an unpacking tool for further unpacking a formative assessment. If you did want to use this, sample of it being filled out for this formative assessment that we just unpacked is that first step is align the formative assessment to the appropriate progress build level. In order for you to really understand what you're assessing, you want to know what level is it aligned to. So this particular assessment was aligned to progress build level 1, which I summarized here. And then you want to really understand which dimensions is this particular assessment assessing. I have the 3 dimensions listed here. Which modality? In this particular one, students are talking and they're doing as they're moving the cards around. And then what would you do? So what? And then you can also summarize the look for here. And then this section is when you would take action and how on the student data. So in this particular case, a potential solution is in the moment during breakout rooms. And then how? In this particular case, you can keep an eye on certain students and keep them in mind for future lessons when they continue to distinguish between observations and inferences. This is a tool you can use to further unpack your formative assessments and gain a deeper understanding of their use and purpose if you want. I'm going to go ahead and give you just about 3 minutes before we close out to go ahead and choose the next on-the-fly assessment for this particular unit and start using this unpacking tool to deconstruct it. And we'll come back in 3. Again, the intention is not for you to complete this, it's just to get started. If you'd like to work on this collaboratively further, of course, feel free to stick by during our 30-minute office hours. So just to give you a chance to utilize this tool, I'm going to ask you to please go to the next on-the-fly assessment, and try to complete as many rows as you can. We'll come back in 3 minutes. I've included 2 additional copies in your individual working docs. Coming back together, I know that was a short amount of time. Hopefully you find this tool helpful, and as you begin, you're able to utilize this for your when you're implementing future formative assessments. But before we close out, I'm going to see if there's any questions that I missed. I'm just going to pause there. Right. I do want to remind you of the additional differentiation and other supports that we have. Just a reminder, if we were to think about differentiation, we can differentiate in one of 3 ways. What you teach, how you teach, and how you have students demonstrate what they've learned. So in Amplify Science, just a reminder, there's a differentiation brief for each and every lesson. And there's also a teacher support tab. So if I were to go to this formative assessment, which I'm already on, and I go back to the instructional guide, sometimes there's a teacher support tab, which gives you additional ideas on how to differentiate. In this case, there's not, but there's always a lesson brief differentiation brief on the lesson brief. Remember, if you scroll down, you'll see the differentiation, and it gives you various suggestions on how to differentiate for English learners, for those who need more support, and for those who need more challenge. So for example, for students who need more support, the strategic partnering idea might be great. For example, if you're doing this remotely, perhaps you can assign students to different breakout rooms and strategically partner them when they're sorting. So don't forget about the differentiation brief as another source of ideas on how to differentiate. So not only, so far, we've been focused on differentiation based on a particular lesson. Please remember that in Amplify Science, the entire curriculum is designed with diverse learners in mind. If you go to the global navigation menu, and you go to Access and Equity, which is, the program guide first, and you go to Access and Equity, and then you'll see differentiation strategies. There are differentiation strategies listed for various student populations. So just a just pointing you here. Feel free to read through these so you get a better understanding of how the curriculum really caters to the needs of varying student populations. And what I've included in your collaborative work doc, folks, right here is the steps to get to this, and also a place for you to jot down additional strategies for support that you found effective in serving diverse populations of students. Any questions there? So just to close out, a reminder of the at-home resources. Remember, you go to your program hub, you click remote and hybrid learning resources, choose your grade, and you can find all your materials there. But remember, if you are using the at-home resources for formative assessments, each of the chapter outlines at the end has an assessment and feedback consideration. And it'll often tell you that if you wanted to formatively assess here, go back to this particular lesson in the original teacher's guide and find the guidance there. And the resources that it points to are the very resources we looked at today. So just a reminder of where you can get formative assessment guidance for your at-home resources. It will in fact redirect you back to the teacher's guide using the same resources we used throughout today. So closing out, I'm going to have a chance for further questions. If folks can, yes, Rachel, there is office hours. You're staying on the same link starting at 4, so no need to go anywhere. If folks can just reconnect back to the objectives and let me know how ready you feel to use unit resources to understand learning goals, apply formative assessment resources to analyze student responses and gauge their progress towards these learning goals, and implement differentiation strategies and supports. This is just some formative data for me. If you feel more comfortable throwing me a number privately, you can go ahead and do that. Going from a scale of 1 through 5. 1, I'm not sure how I'm going to do this. 3, I have some good ideas, but still have some questions. And 5, I have a solid plan for how to make this work. Or you can, of course, choose any number in between 2 and a 4. So if folks can just throw me a number in the chat, if you'd like to privately, that's fine as well. Great, thank you all for throwing me your numbers. That's just good information for me to have. And just a reminder before we close out, the NYC resources site, don't forget about that. Resources from today's PD session, in addition to other resources, will be posted there. Your Amplify Science Program Hub not only has your remote learning resources, but tons of video tutorials on almost anything Amplify Science. And it's continually updated. Of course, we have the program guide and the Amplify Science help there. And don't forget, any questions, pedagogical or non-pedagogical, we have 3 places. You can email 1-800 number, or if you like to live chat, we have support available 7 to 7 Eastern. Before we officially close out, that ends the content for today's session. Again, we do have office hours beginning at 4 p.m.